Hi guys, Cody here with Edge Pro, and today I'm going to give you a quick start guide for your Apex knife sharpening system so you can avoid some of the common mistakes people make when they're first getting started. First thing you'll need to do is attach the Apex body to a work surface. The suction cups on the Apex need a smooth, non-porous surface to stick to. Most kitchen counters work great, but if there's a little texture to the surface, it may not work quite as well. I like to stick the suction cups down before I put the pivot shaft in. I'll put the palm of my hand across the back and firmly push down. You'll hear the suction cups make a popping sound as they push out the air and the suction cup seals. If you feel confident that the suction cups should be sticking to your countertop and they just won't stick, make sure the mounting surface and the suction cups are clean and try it again. As an alternative, Edge Pro also has the stone leveling kit you can use as a mounting surface. Or one of my favorite accessories is the Apex bench mount, which allows you to clamp your Apex down to any flat surface. Once you have your Apex body stuck down, you want to install the pivot shaft and stone arm. Make sure that the stone arm is riding down the center of the machine and that the top of the two pivot blocks are level with each other. While you can sharpen just about any knife with the Apex, we want to make sure you begin with something really easy to develop your technique and gradually work your way up to more challenging knives. I recommend you begin with a Santoku or an 8-inch chef's knife. The large flat surfaces on these knives make them easy to hold flat on the table, so you can put more concentration on operating the stone and less on holding the knife. Before we begin sharpening, we need to adjust the guide plate to the knife. This knife is a little bit flexible, so I'm going to draw the knife across the table as I sharpen, sharpening the sections of the knife that are supported by the blade table. Because I'm going to be moving the knife as I sharpen, I'm going to set the guide plate to the narrowest part of the knife, which is almost always going to be the tip. Lay the knife across the table so the tip is in the front opposite corner. Slide the guide plate forward until it contacts the back of the knife and tighten it down. The idea here is that you want as much of the knife resting on the table as possible without exposing the front corners of the machine. If you're sharpening a small or stiff blade, you can center the knife on the machine, set the guide plate, and sharpen the whole blade without moving it. This is the method I use whenever I can, but it all just depends on the length and stiffness of the blade. Most of the time I talk to customers who are struggling to get their knife sharp, I find out that they're sharpening at an angle that is too low for the knife. The lower you set the sharpening angle, the more metal you're going to have to remove to create a new edge. And the higher you set the sharpening angle, the less metal you'll need to remove to create a new edge. Higher angles tend to be more durable, while lower angles tend to be sharper but get dull faster. As a general recommendation, I'd say you can set your sharpening angle to 21 degrees and sharpen most of your knives to get a good balance of sharpness and durability. Thick knives, you'll want to set your sharpening angle higher, and really thin blades you can go lower, but as a very general recommendation, the 21 degree setting works most of the time, which is the yellow mark on your Apex. Anytime I'm sharpening a knife that has never been sharpened on the Edge Pro, I usually begin with either the 220 or 400 grit stone. You're going to wet the stone and begin removing metal from one side of the knife, then flip the knife over and remove a little bit of metal from the other side. When you're operating the stone, you want to use long and slow strokes. You should be able to hear and feel the stone cutting. And if you can't, try adjusting your pressure or speed. Usually you need a little more pressure on the stone and to slow down your stone stroke. When you're first getting started, it's probably going to be a lot easier to operate the stone with your dominant hand and a bit awkward to operate the stone with your other hand. Just stick with it because this awkwardness will go away with just a little bit of practice. A common mistake I hear customers making is they say, well, it's a lot easier for me to operate the stone with my dominant hand, so I'm just going to sharpen one side of the knife until I develop a burr, then I'll worry about the other side. Then over time, they notice the bevel of the knife has gotten wider on one side than the other. This is why we flip the knife over from one side to the next. We do this to make sure we're removing an equal amount of metal from each side, keeping the edge centered. So what do we mean by developing a burr? Developing the burr is the most important part of the sharpening process. If you don't have this detailed down, you are not going to get optimum results. And it is the most commonly overlooked detail I hear from customers that are struggling to get the results they want. When you sharpen a knife, developing a burr is the first objective. So what exactly are we talking about? A burr is when a rough edge or ridge is left on the knife. This starts to happen when the stone reaches the apex of the edge. In other words, you're sharpening one side of the knife at say 21 degrees. You flip the knife over, sharpen the other side of the knife at 21 degrees. When those two angles meet in the center, you are now reaching the apex of the edge. And a little bit of metal will roll over to the opposite side you just sharpened, developing what we call the burr. Once you have a burr along the full length of the blade, you have now created a new edge. The best way to feel for a burr is to very carefully draw the pad of your thumb across the edge. If the burr is there, you should feel it tugging at your skin. Do not run your thumb lengthwise down the blade because that's how you cut yourself. A couple of important things you should know about burrs. 1, when you're sharpening with your Edge Pro, the burr will only be on one side of the knife at a time, and it will always be on the opposite side you just sharpened. And 2, coarser stones develop more aggressive burrs that are easier to feel. In most cases, once you've developed a burr, most of the work is done. You've done the heavy lifting, and now all you need to do is refine the edge with a finer stone. The stone combination that we tend to use when sharpening knives go like this. On kitchen knives, we usually begin with a 220 grit stone, develop the burr, then make a few passes with the 600 grit stone. Then we'll finish with some really light passes with the 600 grit stone. This leaves a little bit toothier edge that's good for cutting through the skins of fruits and vegetables. Then moving forward, we'll use the ceramic hone as a touch-up tool in between sharpenings. On pocket and hunting knives, we usually begin with the 400 grit stone, develop the burr, then jump straight to the 1000 grit stone. Make a few passes down each side with the 1000 grit stone, making sure that we're developing a new scratch pattern. Next, we'll progress through with the 2000 and 3000 grit polishing tapes. Keep in mind that these are general recommendations that we've come up with for an efficient stone progression. You might prefer to finish with a higher or lower grit. And if you're sharpening knives for a specific application, it might be worth doing some of your own testing to make sure you're creating the ultimate edge for your needs. I hope you guys have found this information helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to write us an email or give us a call. And for more sharpening information, you can always visit our website at edgeproinc.com. Thanks for watching.